And action.
In Halloween Kills, the community is all responding to fear and terror in their own way. Some people run and hide, some people step up to the challenge, and Allison is one of the driving forces behind the group that's activated to go and hunt Michael.
Halloween Kills is a great name because Michael Myers eviscerates everybody. It's a level of violence from him that I don't think has ever been seen. And on top of that, it shows the butterfly effect of not just the action of Michael, but the reaction of the people of Haddonfield.
The whole last movie was a study in trauma. What happens to somebody 40 years later? How does that trauma carry? Here you have an entire town of people that has been traumatized.
David Gordon Green and Danny McBride were always adamant that they wanted to see the people of Haddonfield respond to Michael Myers being out in their town, roaming the streets. I remember David and Danny really wanted to capture the collective sentiment of people seeing him with their own eyes and being faced with the fact that Laurie Strode was actually telling the truth.
The mob takes over for better and for worse. I mean, I think that it's cool because a bunch of normal, average people are rising up, you know, normal people in extraordinary circumstances, and they're all banding together to bring down this one evil.
You see how many people are actually affected by this legend, and they've been impressed with the story of Michael Myers for 40 years, and now that he's back, they're like, well, there's one of him and however many of us, so let's just go do it.
When David talked to me about what his ideas were for the sequel, he was really interested in really kind of taking a deep dive into the original Halloween and sort of like pulling out characters from the town of Haddonfield and being able to sort of enlarge the scope of kind of who we follow in this story. So characters like Sheriff Brackett, Tommy Doyle, suddenly we just start to kind of dive into these characters and sort of try to connect the dots of like, well, what's happened to them since the last time we saw them.
So Cameron Elam is the son of Lonnie Elam, who fans would remember probably from the first movie. So jump 40 years later, there's kind of this crew of people that have been affected by Michael, and that includes Lindsay, who Laurie babysat in the first one, Lonnie, my dad, Tommy Doyle, and Laurie. They kind of have this support group dealing with the trauma from the first encounter with Michael Myers. But so that's kind of, in the beginning of the movie, that's where you find this group, and then they find out that Michael has indeed returned, so that kind of sparks the mob, which goes after him.
When I think of myself as a little girl, 8 years old, shooting Halloween, I think of just, being on the set and not really getting what we were making. I was having fun, honestly. It was another job I was doing. I remember Jamie Lee being really, really sweet with me and very maternal for such a young girl. I didn't know what I was doing until I saw it. Then I was like, what on God's green earth?
Anthony Michael Hall has just come in, and he has the toughest role because he's the one that really charges the whole movie with its mission, which is to gather the people and to go after Michael Myers when he hears what happened to Laurie. Well, that little boy that Laurie walked down the street with has grown up, and he's the real sort of centrifuge in the middle of the movie, and he's fantastic, very powerful.
It's sort of like a really wonderful opportunity that he gave me, this sort of hero role, that Tommy's this 50-something-year-old guy, 51, who now in his middle age is sort of rallying the local community. But it's also rooted in the tragedy of what happened. So he did a great thing along with Danny and Scott Teams of sort of connecting, the original film to the current time frame.
Judy Greer, I've always been a fan of and watched her from afar, and I was really just thrilled when David approached her and she said yes for the film. And Andy's incredible. I feel like Andy really captures a lot of the essence that Jamie brought to the series back in the original Halloween. I think that there's I don't know, there's like a charm and a toughness there that is fun to watch.
We're making these movies for the fans. People have like a real like visceral response to the original Halloween. So I think that like bringing back these characters is really smart, because for all those fans, they're like their old friends.
I think the pace and the pathos and everything that Halloween had was great. I think this really has more, honestly. I think it has a lot more going on. Again, because he's sort of reinvigorated these characters from the original film and reintroduced them. It's also interesting too, because it's confined to sort of one night. You know, it's Halloween nights. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot that I think the fans are going to love. I don't want to give anything away, but it's going to be great.
Laurie Strode, in my mind, is always the centerpiece of the Halloween franchise. When we decided to reboot the series, we wanted to make sure that we had something that played to every generation, of every age. So being able to play through the legacy of Laurie and Karen and Allison and get their differing philosophies and their different ages and cultures that they live in and inhabit.
I think that she steps up and kind of becomes a woman in this one. You watch her kind of take matters into her own hands and say enough is enough. I'm gonna do something here. And she steps up and goes after him. She's brave and courageous, and this one real badass.
One of the things that is deeply explored in this movie is, was it really Laurie Strode, or was it something else? We think it's Laurie Strode because she was the point of his attachment. She was the fulcrum of his obsession, and everything around her became targets. What this movie explores is that may not be true. That there may be something deeper in him than just an obsession with me.
When I think of Jamie, you know, in the original one, she had this sort of like calm strength about her, a quiet strength about her. And, you know, even with, you know, the screaming, him chasing her, you know, she just sort of took charge anyway. So I really can see why people all these years later just love seeing her in this role and being this strong female character. I love it.
We first see Laurie Strode escaping from her burning house and riding in the back of a pickup truck with her daughter and granddaughter. And in true Laurie Strode fashion, when she finds out Michael is alive, she is determined to track him down and kill him.
You know, if you had asked me years ago, I probably wouldn't have had a good answer of, you know, what is it about Michael Myers that makes him so terrifying? But now as an adult, I can tell you. I mean, in shooting these scenes here as an adult, you know, I would look back over my shoulder and to see that figure and that mask and the body language and the way he moves is absolutely terrifying. And, you know, put that in there with the music and the lighting and the directing, and it's really terrifying.
He's as much of a part of our cast as we all are. I mean, obviously it should go without saying, but like, you know, on top of acting in this role, he's also doing like stunts and all that stuff too. I mean, he's playing the most iconic role of the franchise, really. There would be nothing without Michael Myers.
As a huge fan of John Carpenter's movie, it's just such a great opportunity to personally go back into the Myers house, to recreate the set from 1978 and to expand on the mythology that John and Deborah Hill established. So not only are we revisiting legacy characters from his film, but we're also stepping into a literal recreation of Myers' home and seeing sides of the house that we didn't see before.
What you will see in the film is that there is a fervor building amongst the townspeople of Haddonfield, and that fervor just boils up in a super hostile way. Everything is really, really heightened in Halloween Kills, the scares, the pace. From the very, very beginning, when you see the Strode home that's on fire, it's a thrill ride from that point on.
It starts at about 100% and it goes to about 500%. It's so incredibly intense and engaging, and it's a avalanche once it gets going, and it's pretty epic.
It's a maelstrom. It's a cyclone of violence and anger and fear and mob mentality, and it's intense. It's really intense. To all of the people that love these movies, happy Halloween.